So on the point of physical and apparent motion, Dale, so I'd like to just stay in that wee train of thought of me in the middle of a racetrack and you going around it in your motorbike,
Yeah.
right? And what the meaning of a word force is, right? So if you look at the historical, first idea of what a force is, that it's a concept that's trying to relate a quantity of motion, right?
Yeah.
I think this, these two words, a quantity of motion, is what the whole idea or concept or trying to attach a label or some meaning to how do you quantify motion, right?
Yeah.
That's what force basically started off as, right? Newton talks about fluons, right, and fluxions, which are things that are changing over time, right?
Yeah.
And flowing, if you like.
Yeah.
And he then had all these different theories about, mass and acceleration, about how fluids flow. There's concepts of Newtonian fluids. There's obviously Newtonian mechanics and all those things. But if you really start to think about the word force, right, as purely being a concept and a label that we attach to an effect,
yeah.
And what we're basically trying to do is quantify motion in some way or another.
Aye.
Right? And that motion is usually attached to something physical.
Yeah.
That's you on the motorbike again, right?
Aye.
Whereas I standing in the middle, I'm trying to quantify motion, right, from a purely visible perception that I'm having, right? So and so forces, when you talk about forces and whether centrifugal and centripetal and all the pseudo forces that they've defined mathematically, then again it all comes back to very simple things that people need to understand, right?
Well, that's it.
Do you know what I mean?
Aye, of course, and obviously we spoke about this. And for me, when I think of force, I think of the prime mover, the initial cause that put anything into motion. But as far as I can tell from what's going on in our reality, all we're observing and trying to measure is effects of something that's already in motion. So there is nothing that contains what I would consider a force. There's only effects of things. So I want to get into talking about that. We'll talk about the human body. I don't know if you're finished making your point first.
No, I just wanted to, get away from talking about.
Aye, well, because again, I think for me, force, when I think about it, initially, and maybe what other people can think about what they envision as a force, you think of the initial cause of something. So when we're talking about motion, again, I'm going to take it away from the external world, and I want to bring it back to the human body. And if we think about that, so people, sorry, Gav, I'm just going to waffle in here, but you can cut in whenever you want. When I look at the human body and I start breaking down, people have heard me talking about before, things in motion. In order for any object to move, there has to be something that presses on another surface, some, substance, matter, interacting with another matter and putting a pressure on it, a push. Okay, so motion requires push. That's it. There is no such thing as pulling. That's not something that exists as a... Pulling just describes bringing something closer to something else, and push and the concepts that we understand through the language, again, how we attach meanings to things. Push would mean to separate two objects, right? So, when we look at it in the human body aspect, we can trace the mechanics of any motion that you want to make with your human body down to a push source, right into the fibres of the muscle, and how you've got intersecting tubes that will interlock to each other and slide each other along so that you get a contraction of the muscle. So to pull your arm up the way, you would say, well, I'm pulling it. But what's actually happening is there's things intersecting in the muscle that interlock with each other, slide, and will draw the bone towards. That's just what it's describing. Each part of motion requires a push source, right? So if we trace that, right into the human body, right to that point of, well, what made my arm move, right? I know that it comes to the mechanics. There's a physical aspect of mechanics in here that I can trace.
There's kind of 6 basic things there, right?
Yep.
The lever, the wedge, the screw, right? So all of these things are, well known.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all push required. One thing pushing on another thing to make motion happen. So, but when we come to the human body and we get as far as what's happening with the muscles, we now enter into the realms of metaphysics, because what do we then say? Well, what causes the muscle to even move in the first place? An electrical impulse. What's directing the electrical impulse? Your will, your volition. So we're into a realm of metaphysical being here. Something that you can't take out and say, well, there it's its constituent parts. It's something invisible. You can't quantify it. You can't pull out my will, my intent and go, there it's there. So what I have to consider when I'm looking at the human body in regards to emotion is that it's a metaphysical thing. The prime mover of motion within my direct human body is an invisible force. That's the prime mover. It's not something tangible. It's not a solid, quantifiable object. So...
But it is in you, right? I mean, that's the way I feel it, right? That there's the fact that we understand the difference between cause and effect is the fact that we can also be agents of cause, right? So we can have active powers to do something. I could push an object, for example, right? And change its position. But the natural world outside of me, the external world, all I can know is effects still, right?
Exactly.
And I'm not causing that. As you say, there's a prime mover, right? That got all that started, right? And it's continuing. It doesn't mean I'm spinning though on a fucking ball.
And just to add to that, if we take it back to the external world, we understand these principles of push mechanisms required. Then we have a look at the world round about us and we're seeing motion, apparent motion going on above us and surrounding us. So we've got this nonsensical physics running about trying to tell us about Big Bang explosions and things moving about each other and blah, blah, blah. Well, any motion that we're observing or witnessing in our lifetime must be connected to some other physical substance. You can't have a void and nothingness between objects and motion. That's bullshit. In order for, a machine has one aspect intersecting with another aspect and it's a continual push. So if we know that in our applied experience of reality, why is it going to be any different in the bigger picture? So the question then comes, are we going to get to a point, I said this to you the other night, Gav, is it an infinite machine of something pushing on something else? Or do we get to a point where it starts to break down and become some metaphysical non-entity that's affecting physical, reality? I mean, I can see the similarities, and again, in regards to my personal being, where I understand there's a metaphysical component to me that directs, will, volition, deciding I'm going to pick that cup up. The mechanical aspects are all push orientated, but it was a metaphysical drive, the prime mover, that decided to make that happen. So then, we start to look at that's the possibilities of this reality. Does it extend infinitely? A complex infinite machine of one source pushing against another source? Or does it become metaphysical at some unknown fucking place? I don't know.
Well, the moment they've got is going round and round in circles on a ball.
Well, and again, you're talking about voids, empty space between objects. That's just not how I understand reality work. Any machine, any movement, motion that's happening must be some aspect of material matter pressing on some other material matter. That's just it. There's no way to escape it.
I know, it's exactly the same as yourself, my man. You can call it ether or whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
But everything's in some kind of medium, and the only things we know is exactly that. Something has to be touching something. Some surface area needs to be, next to some other surface area, right? And things need to be, flowing, right? There needs to be this idea of something seems to be flowing through the system, right?
Yeah.
Which is, again, back to these descriptions that they tried to bring of what forces mean, right? Mm-hmm. And all that kind of stuff. So for me, it can't exist without that stuff, right? Exactly. It needs to be some kind of continuous impulses. And there's lots of people talked about this. That's Boskovich's philosophy, right? If I'm going to quote names here, people can read him, a Belgian Jesuit. I think Tesla apparently loved them, but his basic idea was that it's the sum of little impulses that are happening over time. So, but for an impulse means for him basically pressure on an area.
Exactly.
Right?
Well,
that is all substances tell. That's all we know. Right?
Somebody's asking what wind is. Then it's a temperature variant, and a pressure decrease or increase, which causes motion within the substance known as air, and that's what you call wind. It's all the same principles. There's no way to escape it, you know. But again, getting back to it, for me, looking at the external world, you know, when people are talking about forces, we're talking about effects of things in motion. We're no finding some, you know, energetic thing that makes things move and transferring of invisible energies to something else, like a billiard ball impacting another billiard ball. There's no a transfer of a mystical energy into this other thing to make it move. That's not what's happening, you know. But the separation, but what I'm talking about in regards to my being, you know, I can trace it so far back when then I end up at a realm of metaphysics, because I can only trace mechanical interaction to a certain point, and then it becomes what people will say, it's an electrical signal that fires down the nervous system and makes the muscle, you know, react the way it does. Well, what directed that then? My will, again. But we've also got an aspect of, you know, just to enter into this, Gav, that, you know, when I sleep, I don't have to regulate my breathing, my temperature. These things are happening, you know, without my volition. So again, what's me?
In fact, you can't even shut them off. You can control them, certainly. Some people can do it, right?
Exactly. But what's the force behind that again? You know, because it all has to come back to a root point. And this is again trying to point this to people. That's when we enter into the realms of metaphysics. That's why for me it's there. Because people thought about these things, and if people sit and think about what I'm actually saying, you'll realise the truth in it. You've got a mechanical physicality, this biological machine that you're operating, but think about what's directing its operation. That's not a physical substance that you can quantify and pull out and show me, you know. So in my physicality, the prime mover is my will and my volition. And that's it.
And again, I'd like to highlight the visual aspect of this, you know, the word direct, right? And closely coupled again to the visible position of something, the bearing of something, the direction of something, right? I'm directing my attention to something when I look at things, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, these things are hugely important, right?
Exactly.
Where you direct your attention is, and who's doing that directing,
exactly.
or what's doing that directing.
Well, that's it.
Is it part of me? Yep.
Yep.
How much influence do I have? Are we all experiencing the same thing?
Yeah.
Right? Yep.
Well, that's why you know there's so much out there in regards to philosophical debates and regards to the mind-body problem. You know, and I encourage people to have a look into some of that, because there's a lot to learn about yourself and make some realizations there. But one thing's for sure, none of them has the answers. But if you just have a look at it yourself through your own experience, you will realise that there's huge unanswered questions and questions that rightly so are there. And nobody has the answers, and nobody has the right to profess that they have the answers in regards to what's actually going on. You know, what is this thing you're calling your consciousness? Again, it's not being quantified. It's not a material thing that can be pulled out and measured in 3 dimensions. That's why it's in the realm of metaphysics. But we can't just ignore the fact that that's what's going on. It can't be poo-pooed and flung under the carpet. It's hugely significant. It's the be-all and end-all. And for me, it's hugely relevant and important in regards to this discussion about force, Gav. Because just to get back and touch on it, if you ask people what's a force, you know, it'd be interesting to hear some people's instant reactions to that question.
Yeah, I bet you'll hear lots of different opinions on what that actually means, right?
Well,
so that is one of the big debates of the centuries, the 17th century. Yeah,
well, people will say, I hit that, you know, a punch bag, or I hit it with some force. Did you? What do you mean by force? You know, because all I see is an effect. I see a mechanical interaction of push mechanisms interacting with each other and then affecting some other object. You know, what is that you're saying is a force? It's not again like the gravity, like a mystical invisible energy transfer and all this fucking crap. You need.
That's the thing. It doesn't exist of its own, right? It's not a real thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
It's just a description of exactly that. You know, you applying pressure over an area to another physical object, right? You know, so, and that's the thing that we all have to take for granted. That's the reality of this thing, right? And if you're going to philosophize and talk shite, then don't fucking ever tell me that that you're not having that same experience as I'm having in direct reality. Do you know what I mean?
So what does it imply then? Because, you know, for me, I have to consider it when I'm looking at the objective reality and I'm seeing motion or apparent motion, whatever you want to call it, then that has to be the same principles. You know, it's not going to be different, again, to my direct experience of everyday life and reality. If there's things moving and things in motion, something must be impressioning upon them in order to make them move. You know, there has to be some physical aspect there that's causing that to happen. Now, how far can we trace that back? That's when we start to get into all this abstract nonsense that the heliocentric model has produced. You know, where it starts to wander into fucking nonsensical jargon. I know something must impress on something else in order to make it move. So if there's motion happening up there, that's what's happening. The mechanical principles are the exact fucking same. It's not going to be any different.
Yep. All of our experiences of lived life tell us that that's the way it's going to work, you know.
Yep.
That's the things that we take for granted in nature day after day. So why should these things behave any differently or be built any other way, right? It doesn't make sense.
Take any machine, you know, a internal combustion engine works on push principles the same as everything else. Now, you know, disconnect the conrod from the piston to the crankshaft, right? Your machine's not going to work. You can't have a void between components. You know, the motion's not going to happen. So there's no such thing as a void between material things that are in motion. There has to be something impressing on something else. Sorry, I just want to keep fucking hammering that point. I'll shut up now.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look again at the historical context, at least from what I've read, then, you know, Newton would have said that there's an absolute space, right? Mm-hmm. There is such a thing as, you know, pure emptiness, right, that exists somehow, and then you put objects in it, or you've got the opposing idea, which is more that it's a continuum of the intervals between bodies, right? Yeah. So only if bodies are there can you actually talk about something called space, right?
Yeah, but the space is still within a medium, a material impression.
Absolutely. I mean, we said that at the beginning. If you're going to talk to me about qualities and quantities of things, then please attach them to physical bodies. Otherwise, I'm not interested in a conversation, right?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm interested, but then we know we're speculating and imagining, you know?
Exactly. So, you know, the reason I want to point out all that is the nonsensical jargon that the heliocentric globe cultists and their fantastical abstract theories of reality, you know, voids and empty spaces and all this stuff between objects and motion. It's just fucking bizarre, totally ludicrous. And if people just have a look at their reality and actually analyse it properly, you'll see that, and you'll see the absurdities that they're postulating.
Yep. And another thing, you know, you said it earlier on, you know, it doesn't matter for me, Dale, if it's somebody trying to sell me a dark patch of the sky for $50 billion a year, right? Or whether it's somebody trying to sell me bullshit for super chats, right?
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that when money gets involved, then the truth generally tends to suffer, right? And I'm not pointing to anybody in particular. I just think that's a fact of life and human nature and the way people are, right?
Yeah.
And I'd rather we weren't, and I hope we rather snap out of it, you know, and do something about the seriousness of the situation we're in.
Exactly.
And make sure that the proper conversations are being had.
Exactly.
And the right things are being said, or you know, our attention is being directed to the proper, you know, how should I say, objects of thought that will get us further.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And Beyond Belief's talking there about the philosophical materialists that think matter precedes consciousness. Well, you know, again, that for me, I can see a real push against that. You know, a materialist, a physicalist tries to assert these nonsensical postulations about, you know, it's matter that produces it all, it's the driving force, it's, you know, again, these people don't even realise that they're postulating determinism and that anything they're saying can't be a true statement because it's all hardwired, it's all pre-wired, everything they're saying, everything they're coming out with was all, you know, destined to happen, it was all determined to happen, you know, and for me there's a real push to shit all over that realisation, the real realisation and contemplation that there may be a duality aspect to your being, because, you know, consciousness, this aspect of the I, this volition, this will that does proceed, because if I don't have that consciousness is not within my biological machine, this biological machine is just going to lie there and fucking rot. You know, so these clowns that try and play it down and ignore it and pass it off as steam or some, you know, swept under the carpet nonsense are fucking at it. You know, but it goes hand in hand with this heliocentrism, Big Bang cosmology. You know, all about bewilderment, you know, trying to make you feel small, insignificant, disempowered. You know, fuck them. You know, analyse it for yourself and don't listen to that bullshit, because the reality's staring you right in the fucking face if you just sit quietly and contemplate it, and no sitting listening to gurus and fucking idols on tinterwebs. Have a bit of contemplation of your own, you know?
No, well said, man. Everybody needs to do the work. Yeah, everybody needs to do the work. I think you only get that certain realizations and experiences through actually doing it, not listening to some other testimony or reading it in a book there. So, you know, absolutely. And it starts, you know, you just need to open your eyes in the morning, and then shut them again and see the difference. Think about it for a while.
Just some guy.
Quantity of motion.
Well, just some guys putting energy moves. It's been measured.
Yeah. Well, tell me his measurement. If I want to measure something, then I need to know the quantity, and I need to know the double the quantity and the half the quantity and any other fraction. I need to be able to determine that. So if you could tell me what his measure is.
Yeah, exactly. And what is energy? I mean, again, it's like coming back.
That's an effect, right? You know, what am I going to, you know, tell me all about energy? Is it the energy, kinetic energy again when I fall down?
Yeah, the effects.
Let's talk about all these definitions.
The effects. The true force for me is the prime mover. And that's where the issue is. You know, that's how we're going to get to that, because we're out within it. It's like, you know, imagine us being beings inside a PC, and we're in there and we're talking about force, and you know, how are you ever going to know the true prime mover when you are part of the machinery? It's an impossibility. You're not going to achieve that. So people need to be cautious of when they're using these terms like force and the energy. I don't know what that means. What's the energy? What's the force to emotion to somebody that's living within the fucking PC world?